Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for a long time now, I've been on a journey of transforming my life. Now I've tried a lot of things to be able to achieve that, but by far one of the single most important things has been taking control of my personal finances. And I've been able to do that through budgeting. So budgeting is a tool that has helped me take charge of my personal finances because it has helped me be able to manage my finances through tracking my expenditure, tracking my income, and that has enabled me to keep track of my progress towards my short-term and long-term goals while also enjoying my life in the process. So in this video, we're going to go through how you can go about creating a simple budget. We're going to go through how you can go about setting your budget, the different categories within your budget. So that is income, the expenditure. We're also going to define what the expenditure categories are, and also show you how to make sense of the numbers and analyze your budget to be able to make meaningful changes within your life and your personal finances. I'm also going to be sharing with you the budget template that I'm going to be using throughout this video. All you have to do is make a copy. So just go to File, make a copy, and you'll be able to create a copy for yourself and be able to use it as you wish. And at the end, I'm going to share with you some pro tips that you can use to make this budgeting process much easier and more meaningful. So let's get into it. So the first step is knowing what your income is, and that's where we're going to start from. This is the income section, the one that's highlighted in yellow. So as you can see, we have all the different sources of income on the left-hand side here, and then we have the different amounts that come in on the right. Now, I need to stress that it is very important to know exactly what your income sources are and how much you bring in from those different income sources. That is the most important first step. So an example of your income sources could be a regular 9 to 5, some investments like dividends, rental income from properties that you may own. Maybe you could have a side hustle, or you could be a freelancer and you get regular gigs here and there. Just note down all the income sources that you have and make sure to include them on your budget. Now, one thing to note is you need to make sure that all the numbers that you're inputting in your budget are net of tax. So for example, when it comes to your day job, that may be much easier because with your day job, you receive net income. So all the tax is already deducted at source. With your day job, you can come here and put, maybe you get £2,000 a month from your day job. You could have a side hustle that probably brings in £400. Now with things like freelancing and investments and business, it's important that you also take into account taxes. That way the numbers in your budget are more accurate and make more sense. If you put figures that are inclusive of tax, you're going to overestimate the income that you're bringing in, and we don't want that. So let's say I have some rental income that brings me about £300 profit every month. So that's after tax and everything. So if you have any other income sources, just include them in here. Where you see other income source here, just include any other income sources that you could have and include the net amounts over here. As you can see, the budget will calculate the total income that you have. So in this situation, we bring in net income of £2,700, as you can see there. Now, obviously, this budget is not currency specific, so you can put in any numbers that you want in any currency. The next important step is defining your goal for expenditure. And that is this column over here where you see goal. So a general rule of thumb that you probably may have heard of is the 50-30-20 rule. So what that means is of this total income that you've gotten, you're going to allocate 50% to your core living expenses. So those are the things that you absolutely cannot live without. 30% to enjoyments or fun or things that make you happy. So things that you don't necessarily need but you love to have. So that's things in there like subscriptions and things like that. And then 20% to your future self. So that is things that align with your goals and ambitions and things that will move you forward. So that is savings, investments, and things of that nature. Now, this allocation of expenditure is not set in stone. This is determined by you, and that's based off your personal goals and ambitions. For example, you could want to spend maybe 60% on core living expenses and then have 30% on your future and then only 10% on enjoyment. It's completely up to you. Remember, this is your budget, so you are the one in control. You're in charge of how you allocate your money. Now on the left here, you'll see the expenditure categories. So here we're going to clearly define what core living expenses are, what expenditure for your future self looks like, and what expenditure on enjoyments looks like. So core living expenses, this is expenditure on things you absolutely cannot live without. So things you need for your basic survival. So those could be things like housing, shelter, transportation, food, things that you know that you can't live without. So when I put figures in here, you will notice some of these will change automatically. Some of these columns will change and the colors will change accordingly. Let's say you pay £700 in rent, maybe utilities, you pay about £200, healthcare, £100 on that, transportation, maybe 100 as well. So you're going to get these figures from your bank statement, from the previous month's bank statement, or bank statements from previous months. So that's how you'll be able to see how much you spend on each of these expenditure lines. Now for those which are variable, for example, electricity and other utilities, for those ones which keep changing every single month, what you're going to do is you're going to get an estimate of the figure based off either last month's bill. You can see probably what you spent last month on electricity and then make an estimate for this next month, or you can take an average of the previous 3 months. So for example, if you spent £100 3 months ago, then 120 the next month, then 150 the next month, you can get the average of all of those and then put in here. So that's for any expenditures that you change every single month. So if we go back here, so for utilities, you might find that your average over the last 3 months was £200 or $200. Put that in there. Healthcare, that probably is a set amount, so put that in there. Transportation. Then you also put in things like debt. The reason why debt is in core living expenses is only because you have a legal obligation to pay debt. So that's why it's in this core living expenses, because if you don't pay it, your house will be repossessed, or maybe whatever you put up as collateral, or you could face some legal action. So for some of you who have kids, you could put in there kids education, maybe your own education, phone bill because you need to communicate, things of that nature. So let's just put in figures in there. As you can see on the right here, this has changed to red. So the next one is expenditure on your future self. So what that means is any expenditure that relates to your goals and ambitions, expenses that relate to the life that you want to live. So that could be anything from savings, anything from emergency fund, things like buying a car, things like buying a house, things like educating yourself or taking a course or something like that, things like a vacation as well. Maybe you want to take a vacation at some point next year or within the year. That's what goes in the future self category. So as you can see, an example here is, let's say, an emergency fund. Every month, I want to put about £200 to my emergency fund. Say every single month, I want to save about £300. Investments can be anything like you want to maybe build a block of apartments, or you want to buy a house or something like that. That could be what you define as investments. £400 towards investments every single month. Say about £50 towards your vacation every single month, another £50 towards your personal education, and so on and so forth. Now the next category is enjoyments or fun. Now this is expenditure on things you want or that are nice to have, but you don't need them for your survival. Say subscriptions like Netflix, Spotify, gym membership, drinks with the girls, cocktails, things of that nature. These are things that allow you to feel like a human being, that allow you to also enjoy your life whilst you also plan for your future as well. Say Netflix is about £15, Spotify, let's say about £4, drinks with the girls, let's say £100 every month towards that. Date night, let's say £100, clothing, £100 every month, gym membership, let's say £30. So that's how your budget looks like now. We've covered the income, we've covered all the expenses, we've defined what the different types of expenditure are. So now we're moving to the analysis section. It doesn't make sense to make a budget if you don't analyze. That's the whole point of budgeting. Analysis helps you understand your spending habits and the way you use and allocate your money so that you can be able to make informed decisions, to be able to change your life and take proper control of your finances to be able to move you forward. So let's get into it. So as you can see on the right here, we have this section here, these columns here, that's the analysis section. So all the way from here, I have 3 different analysis sections. There's this one here, the next one, which is this one, the monthly savings tracker, and then this one, which is the monthly emergency fund tracker. The first one is just to help you analyze your expenditure, your actual expenditure against the goals that you set. You can see the first column is goals. So this is where we input our goals for our expenditure. So as you can see, our goal is to spend 50% of our income on our core living expenses, the things we absolutely can't live without. 20% on our future, so that is our savings and emergency fund and things of that nature. 30% on our enjoyments of fun every single month. Now this next column is your actual. So as we enter data over here, this column will auto-populate. It will auto-populate and change color to alert you on where you've either overspent or undersaved. So as you can see here, we have spent 58% of our income, which is 3,100, on core living expenses. The reason why it is red is because this is above our targets. We had budgeted 50% of our income to be spent on core living expenses, but we have spent 58%. That means we have spent above budget, and that's why it is red. For future self, since these are savings, the column here is set to only turn red when you undersave. So for example, if I change this to 10%, it will turn red, as you can see. That means you budgeted to save 20% or to spend 20% on your future, but you've only done 10%. So it will alert you and let you know that you have undersaved. This enjoyments column is meant to turn red when you've gone above that budget. So for now, we have not. So guys, if you're finding this video very helpful, please take time and like, comment, and share. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So as it stands now, there's a lot of information to pick from this analysis column, the first section. So for example, we have overspent on core living expenses. So that gives you an indication that you need to analyze, why have I spent more on core living expenses this month? So then you can go on this left hand side and then actually understand what have I spent on core living expenses and how can I amend that. And it's the same with the rest. So that's the information it gives you. It not only shows you your actual expenditure as a percentage of your income, which is this, but also shows you your actual expenditure in absolute terms, so the amount that you've spent on each category. Then down here you have the total, so the total of everything that you've spent on, and then here I included an amount left to spend. This calculates the amount of your total income that you have left to spend based on what you've spent on everything. So here, as you can see, we only have £1 left to spend because our total income is 3,100 and we have spent £3,099. So through the month, that will be able to help you track where you're at with each of your expenditure categories and how much you have left to spend as a whole. So the next analysis section is the monthly savings tracker. This helps you analyze where you're at with your savings goals as a whole, not just in this month. So this section is not just for this month. This section is for general savings. On the left here, we have some savings goals. So we have maybe regular savings, so savings that you have just for the sake of saving. We have vacation, car, house. Maybe if you're trying to have a baby, you have a baby fund set aside. Maybe you want to buy a house, maybe you want to buy an apartment. So the first thing you're going to want to do is define these savings goals. And this is something that you can do at the start of the year or at any point in the year that you want to hit probably by the end of the year. So for example, here I want to have general savings of £10,000 by the end of the year. Maybe you want to go on vacation at the end of the year and you know your vacation costs £2,000. Same thing with the car. You want maybe a down payment on your car and you know you need £5,000. So you put that there, £5,000 towards your car. Maybe you want to buy a house and you're saving towards a down payment on this house. And that down payment is £25,000. And so on and so forth. You're going to be able to track every single month your progress towards your savings goals. Now, the assumption that I've made here is that you have separate savings accounts for each of these goals, which is best practice, so that you don't have your money in one place. Or maybe your banking app allows you to create separate pots within the app where you can have different savings goals. At the end of that month, what you're going to do is put the balance on that savings account at the end of the month. All these figures are gotten from your bank statement. Now on the right here, you can see the progress. So what this will do, give you the progress as a percentage of your goal. 100% for the car, 20% for the house, and so on and so forth. So that will give you that indication of where you're at. Now the last section is going to be a tracker for your emergency fund. An emergency fund is that fund that you have to be able to cater for any unexpected changes within your life. So it could be job loss, maybe you're laid off, or maybe any illness, or maybe things like COVID, things that are unexpected. It's always good to have an emergency fund. Now, general practice is to have about 3 months of emergency fund. Now, your emergency fund is usually based off your core living expenses. So in this example, your core living expenses are £1,800, as you can see here. So what this means is to live and to survive, you only need £1,800. With that £1,800, you've covered rent, you've covered your insurance, you've covered your health, eating, transport is sorted. Define your goal. How many months of emergency fund do you want to have? So in this case, I've put 3. So the amount that you want to have for your emergency fund will be your core living expenses times the goal in months that you have. You want to have a 3-month emergency fund. So you get your core living expenses times that 3. So your goal is to have £5,400 in your emergency fund. Now again, my assumption is that you have a different or separate account for your emergency fund. So when you come here to the actual column, you're going to just simply get your bank statement where you have your emergency fund and put the amount that's in there at the end of the month. So in this case, this is £5,000. And as you can see, it gives you the progress in percentage towards your goal, and then also gives you the progress in months. So with the amount that we have in here, which is £5,000, we can survive for 2.7 months without needing a paycheck. So that's what this means. If I change this to £2,000, so at £2,000, you're only 37% there. You can only survive for basically 1 month without needing a paycheck. So now we're moving on to the pro tips. Pro tip number 1 is to make everything automatic. So what you can do is through your bank, you can create standing orders for all your key expenses. So things that like rent, your mortgage payments, and any other key expenses that you have. You can also create direct debits for those smaller recurring payments. things like subscriptions, so that Netflix, that Spotify, and you can also invest in budgeting apps that help you track everything. Now, a lot of banks these days have these kind of features like tracking expenses, categorizing expenses, giving you analysis. Some of these bank apps also allow you to create savings goals or savings pots. You have one account, but you can create different savings pots where you can have your emergency fund, your investment fund, and things of that nature, which allows you to have everything in one place. So automating all these aspects of your budget makes the budgeting process easier. It makes tracking your expenses easier and reduces the friction involved in budget, while also preventing you from missing important payment deadlines. Pro tip number 2 is always have a buffer in your budget. Because as well as you think you can budget for absolutely everything, sometimes unexpected things come up here and there. Things like illness. So it's important to set a buffer in your budget so that you can cater for any of those things. Now, this is different from your emergency fund. This is simply something that helps you within the month for anything that comes up unexpectedly. So let me show you how that looks like. That's something that you can probably put in your future self. Insert a buffer in here and have a buffer of, say, let's say £100. So this £100 is not to be touched. It's just for any sort of emergency that comes up within the month. And the good news is if you don't spend it within the month, you can add it to your savings or any other budget category as you see fit. I can't tell you how many times I've had to move money around within the month just because I didn't have a buffer. Now, pro tip number 3, which for me is one of the most important, is to track your budget regularly. Of course, it's a monthly budget, but it's important to keep looking at your budget as often as you can. So for me, how I do that, every single week, I have one particular day that I look at my budget every single week. And that is Wednesday. I picked Wednesday because it is right in the middle of the week. It's just before the weekend, so I can be able to know where I stand before I go into the weekend and start spending money and enjoying myself. It's also close to the start of the week, so I can be able to see how I've started my week. So every Wednesday, I find time to go into my budget and see where exactly I stand as of that week. Because it's not good to simply just create the budget at the beginning of the month and then look at it at the end of the month and start inputting your actual figures and seeing how that went. You know, this is a simple budget that we've just generated. As I mentioned, all these figures, you're getting them from external sources. So that is your bank statements or your credit card statements. So as you can imagine, through the month, you might have a lot of expenses that go on. So if you leave it to the end of the month to come and collect all these statements and start inputting in your budget what you've spent on each category, as you can imagine, that can be very cumbersome, right? But if you do it every single week, that can make it much easier to be able to track and input the figures that you need. Regular monitoring also helps you make changes on the go. Because when you look at your budget and you see that your money is actually running out, for example, where we saw the amount that you have left to spend within the month, when you see that that's lower, you might not be able to meet certain expenditure. That will help you trigger something and be able to change and make any changes that you need on the go. Now, if you want to watch more videos on budgeting, like how to pay your debt faster through budgeting, learning how to pay yourself fast, and how to exactly create an emergency fund, along with more pro tips on budgeting, watch this playlist that I've created. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.